Hello everyone, welcome to Lesson 3 of Learn Tarot by Whistling Hermit. Okay. Uh, right now, the title of our lesson is entitled Listen to the Story of the Cards. Okay. Now, here we have a language book. When this is a language book for the beginner. And when it is a language book for the beginner, when you would see beginner language books have a lot of images in them. And you get to know the new words of the new language that you are learning through the pictures that you have here. Like for example, letter A, there's a word, aperitivo. Okay, so something like that. It's the same when we were children, when we were still learning our mother tongue or our mother language. When we couldn't yet, when we still do not have any vocabulary, when we're still young, we couldn't yet understand the written word, we learn the story through images. Like for example, when you look at this image, it shows us of a place with a boat and water, a lot of water. And it makes us think of Venice, okay? Venice, okay, Venice, Italy, okay. Makes you think of Venice, Italy, and immediately even if you haven't been to Venice, immediately you already have an image of it. When we were still young, before we go to sleep, our parents would usually tell us a story, and usually the storybook that they will use is a storybook that has more pictures and just a few words. And somehow, because we couldn't read yet, usually our parents would describe to us the scene that is being painted by the book. And sooner or later, when we try to start reading one word after another, as we repeatedly look at the pictures together with the words, then we get to see the story behind. But in those picture books, even if you cannot read the letters, if you look at the images, immediately you will have a story. Like for example, this person is sleeping and he had a dream of meeting a robot that is cleaning. And then suddenly we see here a bell ringing. So it means he woke up. And when he woke up, he started running. Then you say, oh, this person was sleeping and dreaming, and then afterwards he realized he's already late. So he started running out of his house. So in a certain sense, just by looking at the picture, you already get a sense of the story behind it. And that is what I would like to share with you right now. If you really would like to learn to read the tarot cards and to learn it intuitively, my suggestion, because there are different ways of learning how to read tarot cards, my suggestion is first, look at the images and listen to the story that is being told to you by the picture. That way, you are able to harness your intuitive capacity. It's sort of like exercise to your intuitive capacity. And every time, if you would just let the card to speak to you, and that is the technique that you are able to develop, then sooner or later, you will see a lot of stories. Every time you read the card will always have a new story to tell to you. And usually, when the universe or our inner self would communicate with us, they communicate with us through symbols. Like, for example, if the angels would like to reassure you that they are in your presence, they would give you signs like feathers, repeating numbers. Sometimes they communicate to you through your dreams. Your subconscious mind is like that also. Your dreams usually have specific message that only you can understand. And usually that's what the universe tries to do with us, the spirit also. They use images that we would understand. And the journey towards the intuition is also like learning a new language. And they start with images. The more you get used to the story, the more you get used to listening to how the card will tell you stories, then the more you will be able to receive the messages that the universe is constantly sending to us. So my advice to you, this is the way I learned how to read tarot. First, you start with one card. You look at the card, you ask the card to tell you the story. After the card has told you a story, for example, this is the Fool, and the number 0 is usually when we look at Rider-Waite, it is numbered 0. In some non-Rider-Waite cards, they could be numbered 22, but for the Rider-Waite, it is numbered 0. And when you look at it, you see a person who is happy, and it seems that the sun is on the left side. It's either it's going to set or it's going to rise. So you could immediately say, oh, okay, it can be in the beginning of a chapter or the ending of a chapter. Most likely it is in the beginning of the chapter. The sun is just beginning to rise, and this person is full of energy. He seems to be very happy, and he seems to be very confident. He's not afraid to be himself. Why? Because when you look at the card, the person is wearing a loud clothing, so he is not afraid to be different. The same time, he has the sense of adventure. Why? He is in the mountain ranges, and he is accompanied by an animal. The animal can symbolize many things. It can be a spirit guide or just a pet that accompanies him. So there are already two possibilities that you can say. It could be a person. The person that you are reading for could be a person with a pet animal who is a dog, or is usually having dreams, very common that they see a spirit animal dog. The dog can also symbolize a friend, a loyal friend, somebody who warns him when he is in danger. When you look at it here, the person is looking up into the sky and unaware that there is a cliff already and that he might fall. So in a certain sense, you can say, oh, you need to be careful. Don't be too carefree to the point that you will endanger yourself. So immediately, there are a lot of messages you can already gain from this story. Even just the color of the sky, you can immediately say, oh, it's a sunny day. It's a beautiful day for the person you are reading the card for. So immediately, even if you do not know anything about tarot, you just pick up one tarot card a day. You read and you listen to the story that the card tells you, and somehow you are already getting to know the card. I would rather you get to know the card by personally spending time with them, listening to the card, allowing the card to tell you a story. Another story you can ask the card to tell you is like, for example, this person is traveling light. Immediately, the point that can come to you is maybe this person is also a minimalist. Okay, something like that. Usually, by experience, as you will learn as you deepen your intuitive capacity, usually when you see a card, the first thought that comes to your card, trust that thought, because maybe that is the message. Oftentimes, that is the message that is being meant for the person. So when you look at the card, the first thing that strikes you, the first thought that comes to you, whether it be a phrase, a word, or even maybe a song, or even maybe a visual. For example, you see you see that bag there, and immediately you saw an airport. When that comes immediately, trust that and mention it. You just tell the people, okay, I'm looking at the bag, and immediately what comes to me is an airport. And then you try to tell the person, if that resonates with you, then maybe there is something here, okay, or maybe it means something for you. So it's like that. You learn to trust your intuition. You learn to trust your gut feeling. You learn to trust your first thoughts. And you get to know the card intimately. You will realize when you develop this kind of approach when learning the cards, you become intimate with the card. Why? Because you spend time listening to the card, and the card tells you story. It's like getting to know a new person. You let the person tell you the story of their life, and then you spend more time with them, and you really get to know them, because you do not only become aware of what they tell you, but also you become aware of how they affect you. So in a certain sense, sometimes you would notice also later on as you deepen your intuitive capacity. Sometimes when you hold a card, you also feel something. Sometimes you feel restless. And sometimes that restlessness is not yours, but of the person who is watching you or listening to you as you read the card. So you later on become aware also, become sensitive, not only with the visual things, Not only with the things that come into your mind the moment you see the card, but also with the emotions that you feel. You start to become sensitive to the energy. So this is the best approach that I advise you. If you're going to learn how to read tarot, every day just read one card. Spend longer time just listening to the card, making the card tell you a story. Just like a little child who doesn't know how to read letters or words. They just open a color storybook, a picture storybook, and then they tell themselves stories of just based on the pictures. And then sooner or later you would realize, and I know you have experienced that when you were still very young. One day you open the book, a certain story comes. The next day you open the book, you've forgotten already, and still you cannot read what is written, so another story comes. So every time you go back to the book, different stories come, and your imagination and your creativity comes out, and you are letting the book tell you the story. It's there are different ways. Now the ones that are written is usually the thought of the person who made the card or who made the book. So the same time also it's the same with the handbook. Now usually specific cards, like for example the rider waite, there is a classical meaning for each of the symbols here. It helps, no? It helps because somehow the main general intention of the people who wrote it. But at the same time, in a certain sense, if you are just beginning, it limits your creativity, it limits your sensitivity and your intuition. Why? Because if you would just, if that's why I invite you to start first listening to the story that the card has to tell it before you read the handbook. Why? Because if you read the handbook first before the card, then what you will hear is the story of the person who wrote it instead of the message that you might receive from your inner world, So be it from the spirit, from your spirit animals, and also from your inner self or your higher self, also from your ancestors. So to be able to develop that ability, my advice is start first every day, get one card, look at the card, listen to the story that the card has to tell you. After that, then you can go to the handbook and try to read further from the handbook, and then try to see what else that the handbook would like to supplement you with this one. So what happens is that you are more intimate with the card rather than just mechanically reading the card based on what the handbook has told you. So for my advice, first listen to the story that the card has said. So you get one card each day. You start from the Fool, because actually there is a story also. The Fool starts with the Fool. What follows is the Magician. Actually, there is a story that goes about it. If you would try to read the many of the books about tarot, usually the major arcana has a story to tell, from the Fool up to the World. There is a story that shows about our personal journey in our life. So in a certain sense, there really is a story that comes. So my advice, you start with the card. Read the card, try to see what is the story that the card is telling you. Listen to your feeling. Be aware of the thoughts that come to you. Be aware of the songs or phrases or whatever comes to you. This is already getting to learn how to listen to the story of the card. After reading the card, then you go to the handbook and read a little bit more about the card. Now, the second part, which is reading the handbook, will already tell you what the card is meant officially. Okay, officially. But sooner or later, the important thing is that you will be able to learn how to listen to the card. So start with the card, especially if you still do not know anything about tarot. You just get one card, let the card tell you a story. Then afterwards, you read the handbook. Okay. Now, with regards to the handbook, for example, this is a giant Rider-Waite tarot. It has a handbook. This is from US Game Systems. No? There are different kinds of handbook. No? Some handbook, they will just give you some meaning of the card. Like for example, in the US games, which says here, the Fool. The Fool says here, folly, okay, folly, mania, extravagance, intoxication, delirium, frenzy, beroement, and then there is the reverse. Now, later we will talk about reversed and upright. But the important thing here is you just let the card first tell you a story. Upright, okay. Now, here in this kind of handbook, they just place words that will describe the card. Now, you can use that. You try to see which kind of handbook is helpful to you. If that kind of handbook wherein just words are being given is already good for you in order to understand the card, then choose a kind of handbook that just have words. Now start with a very short description only. Don't try to, because if it depends also on the person. Some people they prefer short ones, some people they prefer the long ones, no, but usually the long ones, yeah, it's more exhaustive, but at least for my type of personality, I find it kind of exhaustive. So what I do is I start with the card and then I choose a handbook. Now there are two different kinds of handbook. One handbook would just give you words or short phrases, okay, to describe the card. Another kind of handbook like this one is from the Tarot of A.E. Waite, no? The smaller one, the smaller tarot. This one is from the US games. Now actually the size of the box is like that. I just made this extra box. No? So when you look at the handbook of the Tarot of A.E. Waite, the description is more detailed, and it's in the form of a paragraph. Okay, so one page is given to the Fool. Now let us try to read from the description. So here it describes the Fool. It says here, some see him as the beginning of the major arcana, and some see him as the end. In reality, it depends on how the Fool, which is you, move through crises and challenging times of the world or your own life. Originally, this card meant a crazy homeless person driven from place to place, often attacked by animals. If you have lost everything, if your world has collapsed around you, then the Fool can mirror this difficult state, alone with nothing left but what you can carry in a bag on a stick. So you see, it's different already. This one is telling more descriptively what the card means. This one just gives you words and phrases. Now it depends on the person, depends on your nature, which helps you much more. Okay, so you have to choose what kind of manual that can help you describe this one. But the manual is only the second part. The first part is listen to the story of the card. Now, for me, I prefer the paragraph form because it helps me get more insights. No? So for me, I like the story type of handbook. So different kinds of handbooks, different ways. Now, there are different free PDFs available online with regards to the description of each tarot. So my advice is you look at which kind of handbook that resonates with you, and you can use it as a description. But do not use the handbook as an all like something that is what you really need to depend on. The handbook is just something that helps you. The important thing is first to learn how to listen to the story of the cards. So my advice to you, if you're going to learn the tarot, my advice to you is to get one tarot card each day. You place it there, let the story tell you, the tarot tell you a story, and then afterwards you read a handbook that describes the card. That adds what is missing in what you have heard or what you have seen in the card, and somehow would give you further insights regarding the card. Sometimes also, if you like, you take videos of the card, or yeah, it helps also, because if you are going to a YouTube, you're going to be a you're going to work on YouTube, you know, uh, it's good to start working on it. So you start training yourself already. You start a YouTube video by yourself, put a card there, read what is written in the card, so it's already a one card spread, and then you read the handbook. One good example is the series of cards that I made, 78 videos of it, and it's entitled, you can look at it at the Whistling Hermit channel. It's the one card spread series. It's entitled One Card Spread Series, and each day one card is featured. And as you can see, the procedure is the same approach that I am teaching to you right now. There will be one card, and we read first what the card is saying to us. After the card, we read what the card has been saying to us. Then we read from the handbook. So that is the my advice for you. If you would like to start learning tarot, start with the card, just the card alone. Remove everything and just focus on the story that the card has to tell you. After you've read the card, then read from the handbook. So that's it for today. I hope this has been fruitful for you into learning more about tarot. Until next time, may God continue to bless your ways.